Today's message is a continuation in Exodus chapter 12, and now we come to the latter part of the chapter. Chapter ends in verse 51, and this part of the chapter is not as well known as the first part of the chapter. The first part of the chapter is about the lamb that had to be killed and the blood had to be put on the doorposts, but when we come to this section of Exodus chapter 12, just as important. Let's read then verses 40 to 42. In fact, we'll just read from the context in the earlier verses, verse 39. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt. But it was not leavened because they were thrust out from Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. The time that the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, on that very day, all the host of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It was a night of watching by the Lord to bring them out of the land of Egypt. So this same night is a night of watching kept to the Lord by all the people of Israel throughout their generations. The first simple point is that God keeps his promises. Verse 40 says, the time the people of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years to the very day. We read in verse 41. The 430 years are completed. God brings Israel out exactly as he promised to their ancestors. Genesis chapter 15, verses 13 and 14, God foretells the 400-year trip and exile and deliverance. Exodus chapter 3, verses 7 and 8, God remembers his covenant and comes down to save. You remember that was when God promised to Moses he'll bring them out of the land of Egypt. And you remember that in the plagues, that was the thing that God kept reassuring Moses as he was going backwards and forwards to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's being stubborn and hardened his heart, and the Lord had to harden his heart as the Lord kept reminding Moses that God would bring them out of the land of Egypt. The second thing we see is that God redeems not just individuals but entire histories. God brings a whole nation in one night, or brings out the whole nation in one night, and this moment becomes central to Israel's identity. Deuteronomy 7, verse 7, remember in that passage it says, I loved you because I loved you not because you were the best nation. God rescued Israel because of his covenant love. And let's remember in the New Testament, we come into 1 Peter 2, verses 9 and 10, God has called Christians. We're now a royal priesthood, and we're now called out to show and proclaim the excellencies of the one who's called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. And so just as the Israelites were called out from Egypt, as a Christian we're called out from spiritual darkness and into the light of God. Thirdly, we see salvation is both inclusive and exclusive. If we read down verse 43, and the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this statute of the Passover, no foreigner shall eat of it, but every slave that is bought for money may eat of it after you have circumcised him. If we drop down to verse 49, there shall be one law for the native and the stranger who sojourn among you. Instructions on who may eat the Passover. Foreigners may join but must embrace the covenant. In verse 44, it speaks about being circumcised. And foreigners were welcomed if they would join and agree to the covenant and the covenant of the God of Israel. And so salvation is both inclusive, it's for all people, but also it's exclusive to those who actually belong and come to the God of Israel. Then the last point is community brings responsibility. Verse 51 and 50 and 51 is the end of the chapter. All the people of Israel did just as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day, the Lord brought the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their hosts. The whole community must keep the Passover, and Israel obeys and is led out together. And it shows the importance of community. The early church, Acts chapter 2, the early believers, they lived out faith as a united community. If we just read those verses just to finish. Acts chapter 2, verse 42, and they devote themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, and to the breaking of the bread and the prayers. And all came on every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who were believed were together, and had all things common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings, and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. And so we see the community of the Israelites in Exodus chapter 12 reminds of the importance of the community of the early church and the Christians, and the importance of community now for those who have put their trust in Jesus Christ today. Thank you for listening.